Hey everyone, this is Peter Chihuaga, your host of the Weekly Bits podcast. Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to deliver a PSA about the upcoming Bitcoin 2020 conference. The event is going down in beautiful San Francisco on March 27th and 28th. Nick Szabo, Tony Hawk, core devs, and Bitcoin projects of all types will be presenting. There'll be a bunch of different experiences for attendees and a lot more that's yet to be announced. To learn more and get your tickets, visit bitcoin2020conference.com. For this episode, I'm joined by frequent partner in crime, Colin Harper. Listeners will recognize him as a regular guest on the show from his action on Bitcoin Twitter and, of course, his Bitcoin Magazine byline. How's it hanging today, Colin?
10-4, good buddy. It's going pretty well. How you doing, Peter?
I'm good. I'm excited for our episode today because I've asked you in here, as you know, to discuss your latest banger. It's a cover story currently on the site, and it's under the headline, "On the Coast of El Salvador, Bitcoin is Becoming the Standard." So for anyone who hasn't read it yet, just hit pause on us right now and go do that. But essentially, it's the story of a nonprofit in El Salvador promoting Bitcoin adoption. It's called Bitcoin Beach. Colin, where did you first hear about that group?
Yeah, so I actually saw Peter McCormack tweet about it because he had gone down to, I think it was either El Zante or Punta Mungo. I think he lives in Punta Mungo. But he went down to the first village where this thing's been rolled out, and he had a podcast with Michael Peterson, the dude who's behind Bitcoin Beach. And I saw him paying for a pupusa, I think, or some street food in Lightning Bitcoin. And I messaged him and I was like, hey, who's doing this? How can I talk to them? And then I just DM'd Michael on Bitcoin Beach, and then one thing led to another. And had an interview with him last week. I'm a good guy.
So just give a quick synopsis maybe. I'm going to expect listeners at this point have gone and read it. It's actually doing great traffic and an awesome story. But just really quickly, what does Bitcoin Beach do? Why are they so important in El Salvador?
Yeah, so Bitcoin Beach is a nonprofit that was established about 2.5 years ago by Michael Peterson and some volunteers that he works with down there with his wife. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to create Bitcoin circular economies right now in two villages in El Salvador, El Zante and Punta Mungo. And they're on the coast of El Salvador. And part of the aim here is, help merchants accept Bitcoin through Wallet of Satoshi. They're using the Lightning Network. This is really beneficial to a lot of the people there who Michael tells me 10% of them own bank accounts. I think it's like less than 1% has like a credit or debit card. But the majority of them have smartphones. So having a banking app on their phone that doesn't require a bank is very appealing and attractive to them. It's very useful and helpful. A lot of the testimonies that we have in the article are people talking about how easy it is for them to use even compared to cash. And now, of course, they are using Wallet of Satoshi. It's custodial, but it's perfect for a use case like this. And so that's one part of it, is trying to create this circular economy to kind of ease the banking woes of the populations there. The other is to create a incentives and wage system for the youth of El Salvador. So they get paid to clean up the villages, they get paid to lifeguard, they get paid for getting good grades. All with the purpose of trying to kind of keep them in their local community so they aren't attracted by the widespread gangs that kind of infest El Salvador.
So to kind of hone in on one thing you mentioned there, the testimonies that you got from some of the people actually enabled to use Bitcoin through this program. So for me as a reader, when I got to those testimonies, that kind of kicked the article up a notch for me. The background was all good, great to hear from the founder, but some of my favorite parts were just sort of to really hear from actual people in El Salvador who were essentially unbanked, did not have access to these services, and they're realizing the benefits of Bitcoin. So I'm curious, as a reporter, as someone writing this article, did you feel the same? Those kind of testimonies were kicking up a notch?
Yeah, totally. Because it's when you ask the founder of a nonprofit to talk about his nonprofit, Michael's a great guy, don't get me wrong, but everyone has a narrative to sell, and you want to make sure that you're backing up with what they're saying with, primary source accounts from the people who are actually using this. So for me, it really was. I mean, I thought that was essential to really getting the full story out here, because I wanted to see, like, all right, so this dude says like something like over 100 people are onboarded. There's like $5,000 in Bitcoin circulating in a given time. Seemed like small figures, but for these small villages, $5,000, being circulated, it's quite a lot of money. And I thought to myself, that's great, but I want to hear it from the horse's mouth rather than the person running this. So that was really good for me, and it was just good to see. I asked one kid, I was like, so like, do you use your Bitcoin very much? And his response was just, well, of course I use my Bitcoin. I use it every day. And that was really cool for me to hear, because it's not just one of those things where it's like, okay, you're setting a few people up with Bitcoin wallets. And then like with my like living on Bitcoin stories, it's like when you go into those stores, I ask them how many people take Bitcoin daily, or how many people use Bitcoin daily. And it's like, they get maybe a couple people a month or a week.
This is like specifically what I love so much about those testimonials. And honestly, I think my favorite thing about the article. So like when we do adoption stories, which we do a lot and I think are great, but like usually they're centered in the first world, and adoption people are doing it because they're got some side hustle in Bitcoin, or they're personally just passionate about the Bitcoin, but not because
they have to.
They have to. And then when you read these testimonies, like these people really need a solution, for real, and this is working for them. And that I thought was like so cool. And I don't know that probably I have at some point, but I've not seen that firsthand reporting like in any other article that comes to the moment right now, where it was somebody who's literally like telling us, I use Bitcoin a lot, and it's like helping me in my daily life.
Yeah, man, that was the coolest thing. Like the shop owners were like, yeah, I get people coming in daily to do it. And it saves a lot of hassle for them, because what they're doing now is, they're just going through Michael Peterson through Bitcoin Beach to liquidate, because then they need to pay their bills. But this is a good thing because, I mean, they don't have to worry about holding all this cash with them. They don't have to worry about, maybe if they have a lot of cash after a profitable month, going to San Salvador, the capital, and trying to go to the bank, because like there aren't any local banks in some of these villages. Another thing that it's being used for, which is a common thread and narrative that we're seeing a lot recently, is a lot of El Salvadorians are using it for remittances, which is another one of Bitcoin's really, I think, just like key use cases. So much so that, as long as there are some Bitcoin ATMs, or I can trade with people on local Bitcoins, when I go there, like I'm no longer going to convert currency at a currency conversion desk in the airport, because you just get scalped by fees. I'm just going to take Bitcoin with me and liquidate it.
That's a good hack. I'm going to start doing that.
Actually. I mean, it's great, man. And that's one of the things I loved about going to Europe is like these KYC free Bitcoin ATMs in the Czech Republic and Prague, Parallel Polis. It's like 1% fee, and you just pay your Bitcoin, get your cash, and go on your way. Anyway, a little tangent. But.
Yeah, back to El Salvador for this one. This is actually I have a 2-part question here. So my first part one of this is, do you think it's like actually as easy as this? So easy, I put air quotes for listeners out there. I know it's not easy, but is it as simple as this to encourage Bitcoin adoption in a place like El Salvador? Was it really just a matter of going into these communities and like literally setting people up with Bitcoin on their mobile phones for them to start immediately realizing the benefits? Because that's kind of how the article made it seem. Like these people really needed a solution. Bitcoin happened to be a perfect solution, and all it took was someone like Bitcoin Beach kind of enabling that, and they're good to go.
Yeah. I think it's as easy. Sorry, was that the?
Then that's
question?
Part one. So.
Okay. Yeah. I think the solution of downloading something like Wallet of Satoshi, I've heard Phoenix Wallet is also quite good. Blue Wallet is also pretty good for custodial, though I don't think it's as smooth as Wallet of Satoshi from what I've just personally seen out in the wild. I think it's as easy as that in terms of, you download the app, you send people Satoshis, and it's all managed within Wallet of Satoshi's servers and nodes. So like the payments are instant. There's very little, latency or any friction in the payments. I think that part's easy. The one thing that I think is a little more difficult that the article probably could have touched on a little more it's just getting people to understand that you're not trying to screw them over, and also that you're, because you're telling them, okay, I'm going to give you an app and a currency that's going to be easier to use than cash, and that they think, okay, well, why are you helping me? Right? There's kind of this like, is there a quid pro quo here? And especially for the merchants, for them, yeah, this is almost akin to going up to them and saying, hey, like, start accepting gold pieces, accept cash. And then so they wonder, okay, well, how can I trade these in for cash so that I can pay for things?
Might be even harder to understand if I was in their perspective than cold pieces. It'd be like, start using Dave and Buster's bucks. Which, no offense, I mean, you and me, and any listener out there probably realizes that there's a big difference between Dave and Buster's bucks and Bitcoin. But so this is part two of my question is like, on the other hand, like maybe it's as easy as enabling them with a custodial wallet, but does it also have to be this difficult? As in, does there actually have to be a person on the ground explaining to you why this isn't Dave and Buster's bucks, why this is going to work with you? Because I feel like they're skipping so many steps in kind of like financial sovereignty that they're going from, but maybe that's helpful in adoption. At the same time, they're not so invested in a bank or a third party that they feel like they trust or have to trust, that you don't have to have that kind of side of the conversation with them.
Right. So I guess like to answer that question twofold, like I think you do need to have a community representative, if we can call him that, to kind of really walk people through the baby steps of everything. And also for the merchants to kind of harp on this again, having a liquidity provider is huge when you're trying to bootstrap this new economy. Like you don't want to just give people Bitcoin and say, there you go, have fun. Right. Like you want to make sure there are on and off ramps, because there is something of a circular economy going between consumers and merchants. But merchants still have to buy their, they've got to buy their cornmeal from maybe the village 10 miles away, or they have to buy their chicken meat from, the poultry guy who lives a village over, and they're not using Bitcoin. So you still need to have the liquidity for the cash there, right? As for the second part of your question where, for the intermediaries, this is something I've thought about too. I think for early adoption, until user interfaces and user experiences are smooth enough, custodial, and I think even after that, I think custodial Lightning wallets will probably capture the majority of the market share if this technology starts getting used, kind of in a more widespread manner.
Right. That's worthy of another debate on another podcast, probably. But I would definitely agree that, I don't know, like, so does that kind of mean that essentially like the Wells Fargo of Bitcoin is going to, like, whatever just makes it easiest to use, people are going to stop caring about that really core tenet of Bitcoin?
I think
I know
perhaps
that's a big question.
Yeah, I think some will. I think early adopters and people who want to run their own node and want to have their funds offline, like most of those people are still going to use like, they're going to use a Lightning wallet like Zap connected to their own node, or like Lightning Labs Neutrino or Breeze, something like that for a lightweight client. I think the majority of average users though, like they like they may say they don't like banks, but there's one thing they love about banks is they love the fact that they don't have to worry about if their money's going to get messed with, right?
Right.
And so I think that you're going to have similar functions in Bitcoin ecosystem with kind of like benevolent custodians, I'll call them. And they're going to be custodians that the community trusts. And I think that's going to be a big thing here, is like you're going to have certain companies that are going to custody Bitcoin outright, but their intentions, hopefully at least, are going to be better, right?
Such a slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope.
Custodian. So
it is a slippery slope.
I think one thing, this article is super positive, and it should be. And I think step one, right, is to, I don't know that you can call us banking the unbanked, but provide some level of financial sovereignty to people who don't have
banking the unbanked.
Let's call it. All right, we're banking the unbanked here in El Salvador. So all due respect to Wall of Satoshi for doing that. But one thing we don't really dive into, and would be a whole another article or series in its own right, is like, are we just
reinventing the wheel here?
Yeah. And like maybe one thing that a community representative who is on the ground, needs to do at some step, if not initially, is kind of like then explain why these people haven't been banked in the first place, and why Bitcoin, like kind of give you the core tenets of Bitcoin, and maybe foster some interest in running nodes and being your own custodian to some level. Although I know that that's a huge undertaking.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's definitely like the next best step. Like, in a perfect world, what would happen with a project like this is you'd have like a few villages. Let's say you have 2 villages that are doing this. Each village runs like a few nodes, right? And like, a couple of tech savvy people within the village run those nodes, and then they start setting up, payment channels with people and start trying to broker or start trying to bridge the technical and non-technical gap for people. But kind of in that scenario, you kind of still end up with, I think, unless everyone is running their full node in that scenario, right, you still end up with what Wallet of Satoshi is doing, right? So I think the important thing here too is just like Wallet is custodian, and while things on Bitcoin is supposed to be meant to be non-custodial and something that people can hold themselves, I think the important thing in these kind of use cases first, so that we don't put the cart before the horse, is focusing on accessibility. And I think that's the big thing here. Like the barrier to entry to opening up a bank account as opposed to getting a Wallet of Satoshi app on your phone and then receiving Bitcoins that way, it's like, the difference between 5 minutes and, a day's trip for these people.
Yeah. So that's actually a great segue into the next question I have down here. So what would you personally, opinion time, rather see, Colin? Would you want Bitcoin Beach to kind of grow in geography and do what they're doing in the next village over in El Salvador? Or would you rather kind of dig deeper with the those who are already on the program adopting Bitcoin and kind of start having some of those mining, node running, custody conversations?
Yeah, I think probably the latter. I think I'd rather see the idea kind of fleshed out and see all the kinks kind of ironed out in one instance before it starts like expanding. I think going to other villages would be great, but I think like just as a case study, it's just fascinating to see how well this can work, will work, or if it doesn't work, right? Mm-hmm. Like maybe it fails down the road. It doesn't look like it's probably going to, I don't think that it's going to like bottom out. I think that like what Michael has done here is definitely probably converted some people into hodlers. Like, and that's kind of the long-term goal he said, is like he eventually wants people to start like holding on to the Bitcoin that they earn, and hopefully, in a year or two, they'll find that it is appreciated in a way that they're not used to seeing their cash appreciate.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of getting them more involved into what Bitcoin is and then how it works, I definitely think that you would want to focus on like, your flagship village, try to start educating them on the finer points of self-sovereignty. And then maybe from there, it's almost like they say Bitcoin's a mind virus. I mean, about half the people that we know, or even us, like we started learning about Bitcoin, and then sooner or later, perhaps our friends were telling us to shut up, like at dinners and like at get-togethers. Right. It's a mind virus. So like once you kind of inculcate this colony of El Salvadorans in El Zante or Punta Mongo, maybe they start spreading that elsewhere, right? Maybe now when the pupusa woman goes to buy her cornmeal, she starts talking to the miller about Bitcoin, and then that sparks a conversation, and then a few months later, dude's downloading his own wallet of Satoshi, and now they're using Bitcoin for transactions rather than having to cash out to fiat.
I'm so curious to see what happens. We got to set a calendar reminder, let's say like 3 months from now, just do like a check-in with Michael.
Yeah, man.
Just whether that's an article or not, I'm just curious.
I want to go visit it. I told him, I was like, man, I'd love to come visit and do like because if I did that, I would just love to do like a longer feature of just like,
try and give him a workshop maybe or something. See like how much they're actually interested, like big Bitcoin nerds like we are.
Yeah, right.
There. So did you get a sense from your conversations about what is next for Bitcoin Beach? My vibe from reading the article was like, Michael and the team are busy enough just sort of like maintaining what they've established in those 2 villages. But did you get a sense whether they're trying to dig deeper, go expand more geography, or any of that?
I think that their big goal right now is within the villages that they've embedded in. And my memory is failing me. I'm pretty sure Punta Monga is the one that they've really sunk their teeth into. Like El Zante is like kind of getting started, but not as much. But from what I can understand is they want to do a few things. Number one, they just want to keep onboarding more families. So I think really the key here is kind of if we, not to disparage what they're doing, but it's kind of a quantity over quality thing. Like they're not so much worried about the finer points of Bitcoin education because these people aren't going to be able to run their own node, right? Like they're not going to be able to like buy a nodal, or they're not going to be able to like just have like a
just running it.
Yeah, exactly, like a PC lying around that they're just going to like download 250 gigabytes.
Yeah, and just a quick
blockchain.
aside, all the times I pause our conversation to be like, well, they're not as sovereign as they can. I know it's not as easy as it would be for us to like totally control your own keys and all that.
Right, and so on that point, like I think they just want to get more families, and then what they're also trying to do is they want to create like a local exchange. I don't know what that looks like.
Wow.
Yeah, like what they want to do is like they want to be able to create like trading groups and exchanging groups so that there's like actual fiat liquidity. And so I imagine that would probably be something as simple as just like a Telegram group, right, between all the Bitcoiners in these villages.
I feel like that's a really clever next step.
Yeah,
because that brings in a lot of conversations and like the people that are willing to offer liquidity for more Bitcoin, then Orange Coin go up, and they're like super psyched, and they start thinking about, then that grows from there. That would be great to see.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big next step, especially in terms of just like making it so that Bitcoin Beach doesn't have to be the liquidity provider of last resort,
And I think they're not wanting to own everyone's liquidity. They're wanting to enable them to have Bitcoin.
Yeah, and they want to be able to. I think the like you said, it's pretty shrewd that they're looking towards that exchanging aspect, because once you have that fiat ramp, like you basically have all the pieces in place for a circular economy. Right. It's like people can use Bitcoin if they need cash, though, for whatever reason, they'll have a place to cash out immediately. I think that overall, though, just to cap off the answer, what they're really focused on is they want more merchants and more people using it, because they really want to kickstart this circular economy. And right now, like, they're doing a pretty good job. Like, every day people were paying in Bitcoin in that village, which is awesome.
That is awesome. I mean, great article. One of my favorites. Definitely my favorite one of early 2020.
Thanks, man. Keep
up the good work, Colin. Is there anything else before I let you go here that you wanted listeners to know about the piece?
Not really. Just follow Bitcoin Beach on Twitter. Give them a shout out. Tell your friends. It's a cool project.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for joining me, Colin. Remind everyone where they can find you online.
You can find me at Bitcoin Magazine as always, and you can also find me on Twitter at As I Lay Hodling. You can also just find me by my name, Colin Harper. That's one L. I've got a red beanie on in my profile pic covering my eyes.
Look for the beanie, everybody. And listeners can find my author page on bitcoinmagazine.com and can follow me on Twitter at Peter Chawaga, CHAWAGA. That does it for another episode of Bitcoin Magazine's Weekly Bits podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, please don't forget to leave us a rating and review so we can improve the show and help reach the undoctrinated no-coiners out there. The Bitcoin Magazine Weekly Bits podcast is a BTC Media produced podcast on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. Thanks again to my guest, Colin Harper. This episode was produced and edited by Graham Peterson. If you're interested in reading the story we discussed or others like it, check out our homepage at bitcoinmagazine.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter at Bitcoin Magazine to keep up with all the latest. You can find more engaging podcasts over at letstalkbitcoin.com, and you can follow them on Twitter at the LTB Network. Be sure to subscribe to the show on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.